Hello, my name is Zach Gibbs, and I'm a content developer within education services inside Juniper Networks. And today we will be going through the Paragon Active Assurance Monitor Templates Learning Byte. Alright, so the topology on the left, we have three main devices we're concerned about. Those are TA1 and TA2, which are both test agents, and their ETH0 interfaces connect into the management network, and that's how the control center at the bottom will be able to communicate with them. And then we have ETH1 on both test agents that connect into the service provider network. All right, so what do we need to do? We need to create a template for multiple monitors that will be used with multiple monitors, that is, for video conferencing. We're going to use a UDP task, and since this is a monitor, it's going to have an indefinite duration. Remember that monitors, they go on forever until you stop them at least. And then it checks for a fixed expected DHCP value of 10. And then the number of flows is always 1. Full mesh setup type. Test agents might be different though. The rate is always going to be 1 megabits per second. The server UDP port actually might be different. And then the error seconds threshold is fixed at less than 1% packet loss, less than 30 milliseconds of jitter, and less than 150 milliseconds of delay. And so at this point, it might be a good idea to point out which values will be static values and which values will be dynamic values. And so the UDP task, we know that's just going to be a task. And then the duration, that's something that we won't really mess with the template. And then the fixed DHCP value, the expected value of 10, that's going to be static. The number of flows being 1, always. Again, that's going to be static. Full mesh setup type, static. Test agents might be different. So you might guess dynamic there. Rate, 1 megabit per second, static. UDP port, that's going to be different, could be different. And so that's going to be dynamic. And then the error seconds are all fixed, which means they're static as well. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and jump to the control center web interface and get this going. All right, so here is the control center web interface, and we're currently in the dashboard. And so we need to go to the monitors section, and let's create a new monitor. And here we have a list of tasks. But before we get going, let's go ahead and click the Create Template button. And one thing I do want to point out is here on the left, we have the different sections. And notice how there's nothing about templates here. And so once we create a template, there will be I think it's called a My Template section, if I remember right. And that will be available to select that template. So let's go ahead and click Create Template. And so not much has changed here. Kind of all looks the same, but we need to name it, and notice how it says new monitoring template at the top. So we'll call this VoIP LB template, and LB of course is learning bytes. And so we'll select UDP here. And here is where we get to change things. This looks very similar to setting up just a normal monitor task. However, we have this template input on the right. And if we select it, then it becomes a dynamic variable. If we leave it unselected, it's a static variable. And so let's go ahead and full mesh. Again, that was static. The clients, this is supposed to be dynamic. So it's the test agents here. So notice how this changes to input, and we have to select input. And if we already had something created that would work for here, for clients, then it would be in this list, but we don't. So we need to select the Create New option. And we name the variable. And here we want to name it something unique. You don't have to, but it's sure helpful to do that. And well, with the variable name, it needs to not have any spaces. So let me change that real quick. So we're naming the variable name clients-VOP, and then the display name that will be shown when using the template will be clients with a space VoIP, so VoIP. And let's go ahead and click OK. And if we select that checkbox or that input box again, we can see that now we have the client's VoIP variable there. And so we can select that. And it's selected by default since we just created it. And so, okay, so with that, number of flows, 1 is fine. Rate is 1 megabit per second. That's a static value. Now the server port, that's supposed to be dynamic as well. And so we need to create a new variable. And we'll call this port VoIP. And same with the display name. And it selects it by default since we just created it. It's in the list there. We could create multiple different variables for this, dynamic variables. Client port, we'll just leave that blank as in the default there. And then with the loss, 1%, jitter 30 milliseconds, delay 150 milliseconds, and the expected DHCP value is going to be 10. And all these are static, so we're not selecting the template input checkbox. And so let's go ahead and save that. And now you see we have this section called My Templates. That wasn't there before because we didn't have any templates. And under the section My Templates, we can see we have our VoIP LB template. And here we can edit it, we can delete it, we can clone it. And so with this, we're just going to select it, and that's going to add it in. And then we need to name the monitor. We'll call this VoIP LB monitor. And notice here that all we have is clients VoIP and port VoIP. And so all we have to do here is select the clients. We don't have to configure any of that other things. And where this becomes useful is, say you're configuring many different monitors, some with certain test agents, some with other types of test agents, and all the other variables are the same. Why configure all the other variables every single time if all we have to do is configure these two different variables? And we'll change the port, that's the server port, to 5001, and then we simply click Start. And it gives us an option to start by creating a report and configuring it, but for this Learning Byte, we're going to skip that. So let's go ahead and click Start. And one thing to point out here is, note up top here, it says using template, and then it specifies the template we're using. And we can click on it to show the template details, and that just takes us right back to it, where we would normally configure the template. So it's the same thing as if we were editing the template. And so the monitor is currently going on right now. One thing I did want to show you that I almost forgot is when editing a template, you have this edit input option. And this gives kind of a database of all the variables that you've created, the dynamic variables. And look at this warning here. It says changing variable names in existing templates might break existing orchestration scripts. And the reason behind that is you might reference these variable names in orchestration scripts. So if you change it here, you need to make sure you change it in those orchestration scripts. And so I'm just going to go back. Let's go to monitors and then go to list. And you can see that the monitor we have running, and click on that. And we can see here it's currently running, and we're getting feedback, we're getting results. And we can see here the rate, we see here the loss is nothing, delay is nothing. That's all looking pretty good. We can click on the individual streams. We can see that information in the graph. And also if we go to the table, I have to select show all since there's no errors. And if we scroll down, we'll start seeing output here. Just have to get down further to the bottom of this. There we go. Okay, so we're starting to see some output. We see the actual numbers. We see the delay, milliseconds, and delay max. And if we go over to the right, we'll see the jitter as well as packets received, lost, and things like that. Everything looks good there. And you'd see the same thing for the other stream. So this is working great. We were able to use the template we just configured to create a monitor, and then we could go back and create tons of other monitors with different test agents, and it would save you tons of times using a template in that fashion. So that does bring us to the end of this Learning Byte. In this Learning Byte, we demonstrated how to configure and use monitor templates. So as always, thanks for watching.
Visit the Juniper Education Services website to learn more about courses. View our full range of classroom, online, and e-learning courses. Learning paths, industry segment and technology-specific training paths. Juniper Networks Certification Program, the ultimate demonstration of your competence. And the training community, from forums to social media. Join the discussion.